Summer is officially over with Labor Day passing, and that means that the cold weather will be setting in sometime. I'm not sure when, because it has been insanely hot in California and probably around the country as well. But apparently the cold weather is setting in, and that means more people will be indoors and there is more chance of coronavirus to spread. And in recent days, we now know from the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington, which has been a go-to for the CDC, for a lot of health experts, and for the White House, but this one is actually a verifiable source. U.S. deaths from coronavirus will reach 410,000 by the end of the year, more than double the current death toll, and deaths could soar to 3,000 per day in December. This is from the director of the IHME, this institute. He says, quote, "The worst is yet to come. I don't think perhaps that's a surprise, although I think there's a natural tendency. We're a little bit in the northern hemisphere summer to think that maybe the epidemic is going away." Relatedly, the institute says Americans' refusal to wear masks still remains a problem. It's an extraordinary opportunity to save lives, but apparently, the use of masks declined from a peak in August, and declines are notable throughout the Midwest, including some states such as Illinois and Iowa, with increasing case numbers.
Yeah.
Bad. I mean, this is the thing, like, I feel like we're in this moment of we have to keep repeating, just because you're over the virus doesn't mean it's over. Just because you're over the pandemic doesn't mean it's over. And it's hard. I mean, initially it was like, well, I want to do whatever the opposite of this awful, lying president does and says, because he's totally bungled and has blood on his hands because of this. And then you reach a point where you're like, it is 110 degrees and we're at a beach and people are without masks. And you know what? I'm not going to wear one. One can understand, we did so much early on in this pandemic because of the failures of our government to stay at home. A lot of corporations and businesses, small businesses, made tons of sacrifices, didn't get the loans they deserved. And all we could do was stay home and be by ourselves and wear our masks. And now, months and months, 6 months into this thing, part of me gets it, even though, my God, double the amount by December, Anna. That's staggering.
Yeah. I feel like this pandemic has really revealed what we already suspected about the right wing specifically, and how their supposed value of human lives when it came to women's right to choose, right? How they wanted to do away with a woman's right to make decisions about her own body because they genuinely believe that a zygote is a living, breathing thing that we need to protect. I mean, it just, for me, just further confirms that it's not about wanting to value and save human lives. It's really about wanting to punish women for the choices that they've made, the choices they'd like to make. Yes. That's one part of it. The other thing is, we are uniquely awful as a country in how we've responded to this. I mean, we account for 4% of the world's population, but because of the high number of deaths in the United States from COVID, we also account for 25% of the number of global COVID deaths. Yeah. I mean, it just gives you a sense of how much we failed. And we're right up there with countries like Brazil, for instance, in terms of our failure. But we're not the same as Brazil resource-wise. I mean, we are uniquely awful in that we have the resources to do the right thing. And the Trump administration has actively decided to do the opposite of what's in the best interests and in the best, health of the American people. He just doesn't at all care about this at all. And conservatives don't care. They don't care about human lives. All they care about is finding ways to control us, controlling the way we live our lives. And I think they use abortion as an excuse for that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really interesting. There's a lot of senators up for re-election who this November who railed on Obama around Ebola, like, oh, you failed. 2 people died. 2 Americans died. Joni Ernst laid into Obama for those two deaths. 190,000 deaths. I think we're there today. Maybe it's 186,000 deaths. This is, and what? I mean, again, this is the death cult of the GOP. And it is a life or death election. I absolutely believe that in so many ways. But it is hard not to, here's what I will say. It's hard not to behave as atrociously as the worst people are behaving in this country, because there is no adult in the room. And it is irresponsible people putting all of the weight to survive this pandemic on responsible people. And yet we don't even get masks. Have you gotten your N95 in the mail? Like, we don't have anything. So like, what are we supposed to do? What are the people who want to be responsible to do? What can they do if they're not an essential worker? Or, you know, if they can have the privilege to stay home versus go out every single day. So it is this free for all Lord of the Flies mentality. And you're absolutely right. It is, as an upcoming Newsbroke piece on Saturday that I am hosting is talking about, it is this pathology of American individualism. It is a cultural problem that we have. It is a belief that somehow all government is bad and that we can't collectively do anything. That is killing us. That's truly killing us. That we need to take an honest look at. Like, what does it mean to have a community? What does it mean to have a nation? What does it mean to band together to do something other than kill a foreigner on a foreign land? You know what I mean? Like just because it's not a war, so what do we do? Like, it's not a terrorist, so what do we do? But can you imagine if it was? Oh my God, you know, like, yeah, that is the saddest part, is thinking about if this were a true war, how we would have treated it.
And going back to what you said about Joni Ernst and how she made a big deal about 2 Americans dying from Ebola, what the Democrats fail at over and over again is, while they might pass the right policies in the House, that's not even half of the battle. The majority of the battle is how you engage in political theater. And Republicans have always been better at that. You know, every once in a while, I'll get comments from our audience. They'll be like, no, you don't get it. Democrats are failing on purpose. They are paid by their donors to lose. And you're probably right about that. But one thing that I do know for a fact is that the corporate Democrats want Biden to beat Trump in this upcoming general election. There is no question about that.
Sure.
But they are failing in their messaging, because while Trump is like punching them in the face over and over again, they're just like, no, but Joe Biden's super empathetic. No one cares. No one cares. That's not enough of a message. If I were Joe Biden, every single day, I'd be holding a press conference, some sort of event where I bring in families or people who have lost their family members to COVID because of Trump's incompetence. Okay. I would bring in soldiers or family members of fallen soldiers to talk about how, you know, their son or their daughter, whoever they lost in all these needless wars, is not a sucker and a loser. Like, the theatrics matter. Nancy Pelosi, she's like, oh, well, when it comes to the stimulus, the House, we passed a stimulus bill. Now the ball is in the Senate's court. Are you kidding me right now? Really? The Senate is going to vote on their version of stimulus, a so-called skinny stimulus, this week. Okay? It'll do nothing for the American people. But you know what they're planning on doing? GOP in the Senate's going to pass it. And then when the House refuses to pass it, every day they're going to point fingers at Pelosi and Democrats. Why don't you want to help the American people? Why won't you pass this bill? Why are you letting Americans, remain in this desperate economic situation? They know how to play politics.
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi's like, whatever, man, I'm 80. I got my 2 $12,000 refrigerators. I'm living the high life. I don't care. That's what Nancy Pelosi signals to the American people on a daily basis. She is not our friend. People like her in Congress are not our friends. They're not going to fight for us. They're not going to fight Trump. They're not the resistance. They're 100% the assistance. And so the question really, in my opinion, goes to the left. How are we going to fight back?
Yeah.
Right? Because if we're going to sit back and wait for Democrats like Nancy Pelosi to do the right thing, and serve as an opposition party to Donald Trump. I mean, we've already seen how that's played out in 3.5 years.
You're absolutely right. I think this is such a good case to be made that progressives need to reclaim this party, that we need to build outside of this party, and we need to understand that they are not, as much as they claim the resistance, they're the assistants. You're absolutely right. Because I mean, I look at Black Lives Matter and, the Movement for Black Lives, which is an awesome organization, and as in the same breath, they're like, defund the police and Trump must resign, and this is, arguably a fairly left group. Not even as if it's radical to redirect funds from police departments into, health and human services or whatever. But like, they can say both things at once, that this is part of our strategy. We are the actual resistance. The streets are the real resistance to this fascism, to the white supremacy that we're seeing, to the extremism that we're seeing. And exactly right. We're not holding press conferences for him the day after he gets impeached. And I think it's the Democrats. I mean, it's worse than what you're saying, because I feel like they are complicit in ignoring the death. They're complicit in moving on from this story that should be the story every single day, is how do we keep people safe? I think about nurses and doctors have to go to work every day. They're so tired. They are so, like, imagine getting up every morning and going back to the same losing battle, right? And knowing that your government after 6 months is doing nothing to help you, and that the Democrats aren't actually lifting you up. Yeah, exactly. They well, we couldn't get legislation passed. It doesn't matter. You're totally right. Just keep talking. Don't ever stop talking about it. Don't ever stop holding press conferences about it. That is how I think you win in November. And that's definitely how we can change this narrative of everyone for themselves, Hunger Games style, to, hey, let's do something for our like collective good here. Let's wear our masks. Let's continue to not, gather in social situations, have those gender reveal parties that end in wildfires. I just want to say, like, I think a lot of people have been affected and they will continue to be. Please, it would be I would not be doing my job if I didn't say to please continue to exercise incredible caution, to not gather with your friends and family. I'm telling my mom, look, Thanksgiving, Christmas, I'm sorry, I might not be able to see you, obviously get tested, but let's treat this with the respect and the gravity that our politicians are not treating it with.